Good morning, afternoon, or evening, and if, like me, you woke up on Sunday morning, you were probably quite excited. Well, not just because you woke up, because what you probably saw was this. And so, Alpha 24 is finally out, and the question on almost no one's lips is going to be, what's Tom Zero AD's first impression? But despite that, they are the first words on my lips, and as it's my channel, I'm going to answer it. So, what have I noticed after just 3 days of having the new game? Well, that's what we're going to find out now. So when you come in, the first thing you're going to notice is that it looks pretty much as it did previously, apart from you'll now see it says Alpha 24 Kshaasha. So why don't we go and look at a few of the changes that have actually come into play. Now, our first step is in settings, and we can see we have hotkeys now. So you can now assign hotkeys as you choose. So let's have a look at things, for instance, about selection. If we wanted to select idle units, that currently is assigned to I. You could say, oh, I also want to assign it to Shift A. You hold it down and now it's been assigned to Shift A. Now, if, however, this causes a conflict, it will let you know. So you can see that I've selected the slash, but that's also how you select idle warriors. So it said you shouldn't really do that. When you install AutoSieve and so on, that has some hotkeys attached to it, and that they also conflict. So it's worth having a look through to check that the ones that you're going to be using a lot aren't conflicting with any others. If you want to accept those, then it will be accepted. If you press reset, it takes you back to the defaults. So that's a really nice little feature that's been added. If we look at the other thing in settings, you've got looks very much the same as it did before. The big differences are going to be pretty much this thing about snap to edges and the control group membership. So we'll come to exactly what snap to edges is when we're inside the game. But what you've got at the moment is when you press control, you can either have control to enable snap to edges, or you can have control when you place a building to disable snap to edges, your choice. It will default to enable, and I'd recommend keeping it that way, but it's up to you. And the other thing is control group membership, which is also formation control. So we'll have a look at that as well. So control group membership, this means that can units be in more than one control group? You might have a group of soldiers that you also want a subset of to be doing something else, or be able to pull them away to from chopping wood, for instance, to build houses. If you have that, then you might have units that you want in both groups. So if you have multiple, that's fine. If you don't, then that's not fine. It's going to be game over on that. And then we've got formation control. You can set default formations. We'll go into that in the main game. And this says for walk and patrol, do you want to have a default formation? And that's it. We'll look again in the main game a bit more at that. The next thing, click the wrong button. Next thing is we'll have a quick look at the catafalques. So these are the relics. What happens is this will give you details of what each of the relics does if you manage to capture it. Now, the intuitive thing would be you are playing a game with relics. You've got two factions facing off against each other. They're going to have the relics that relate to those factions. It's not the case you get two at random. So you may get the ones from your factions, you may not. But knowing what they all do is pretty helpful, because if you are playing a large game and say there are 8 on display, you might want to prioritize getting one ahead of another if you think it's going to have better bonuses for you. So knowing that's very handy. And the other big improvement is in terms of map overview. You can now look at all the maps, so you can select this bigger or smaller. This is all the skirmish maps. There are 7 new ones. They are Atlas Valleys. Let's check if I remember these. Atlas Valley, then Farmland, which looks very interesting, but it's a 2-player game, but it's quite a big map, so it's not the best in that sense. Then we've got a Bedsker Bog and a Bedsker Bog Knight. Then Oceanside, which is very similar to Hyrcanian Shores or Continent in that it's got water down one side, not Continent, sorry. What's that one called? Let's go and find out. We'll go into random, and you can see these. So yeah, Phoenician Levant or Kerala is similar kind of principle of having water down one side. You can also search for maps like mainland here or unknown. The disappointing thing is that unknown land is now gone, so that's a loss. Disappointing. A very, very good map that made things a bit more interesting. Anyway, back to the new ones. We have Oceanside, as I've just said. Then we have Sayadri Butte. And then we have Temperate Roadway, which looks really, really interesting. And Vesuvius. And those are all of our things that we'll notice on this screen. So why don't we go and set up some games and then have a look at those. So game setup is very similar to how it was before. There's only a couple of main differences that I want to go through. One is that the ceasefire is now done with a slider. Whether that's good or bad is up to you. I prefer to select with accuracy rather than having to try and drag, but that's my choice. The other thing, if we just have a quick look, in the browse maps, you can now just pick a random map. So you'll select it at random, then select, done. So that's quite interesting, although you could just have selected random up here and it would have done similar. So I'm not quite sure exactly what we've gained from that. But the big thing is this world population button. Now this basically sets the cap at the entire world rather than at an individual faction level, and it will be divided equally between those factions. So if you've got 4 players, for instance, so let's set that, and we want a world population of 600, everyone will start out with 150 population each. Then when the first player dies, their 150 population gets distributed among the other players, so the thing goes up to 200, and then after the third player dies, it will go up to 300 each. So it brings an interesting idea of that, do you want to leave a player who's really weak and just keep them on, this is in a team game for instance, keep them fighting, but with a massively diminished population, because if you kill them off you might let one of their allies have additional population, they're more likely to implement. How exactly it will be used I'm not sure, but it's a really interesting idea and I'm really intrigued to try it out. What we'll also do is go into the lobby and just see there's been one big change. Well, first of all, there's no jump straight in option that there used to be in auto connect. That's gone. And the other thing you'll notice is these little locks. If you set up a game, so I can join this TG for instance, because it is unlocked. So in I go, so someone's team game. But if I want to set up my own game, I can now set a password, which I will do, and everyone will need to know that password if they want to join the game. And if we have a look in here, you'll see that my game, Wickham's game, has got a little lock on it. But other than that, it's all much for muchness, and what we really want to see is inside the game anyway, so why don't we go into there right now? So here we are inside the game, and the first thing you'll probably notice is that it just seems a little bit slower than it previously did. So the walk speeds and so on have actually been adjusted, so you can see the cavalry certainly seems slower, but that's one of the sort of standout things. Now whether that's seen as a positive or a negative, I think it's very much up to you. I mean, some people, myself probably included, actually would quite like the extra sort of thinking time that you get, but I think the players that were exceptionally good at micro will feel that they've probably lost out a little bit, as that skill is not as valuable as it was previously. The other thing is you'll see that the little GUI here is massively changed. Everything's a lot smaller, so you see more of the screen, which is good. But you do find that the icons are a bit smaller, so it's worth setting up. If you get the auto civ hotkey, get those hotkeys in action because you'll find them very useful. So at the moment, you can quite easily click on the wrong thing, so using hotkeys for that will become very, very important. There's also these little icons in the top left, so if you look, I'll try and do a zoom now. Let's see if that's going to work. I'm sure it will. I can use the video magic, but the zoom at the top left will show that I've got 21 people working on wood and 23 on food at the moment, which is quite a nice little thing, so you can see how many people you've got working on each resource, and equally we can see in the main population one, you've got how many people are gathering resources overall. So that's pretty useful, and that's kind of pretty much the, the most of it, I suppose, for the for how it looks and feels. Say a bit slower, and these are a bit different. Things that have been improved are some of the things such as this. So now when your towers are being upgraded, you get this nice little thing. You can see the status bar of it being upgraded, just the grey one, but that makes it clear that it is being upgraded, so you know when your opponents are enhancing towers and things. Another feature was the thing I mentioned earlier. So if you let's go to place a house, if I press control, it will snap that into various locations around the previous building. So what I might want to do is put one house there and then continue to snap those across, and then make like a wall of houses, but it means that you can get them absolutely 100% next to each other without get them right next to each other without the need to kind of rotate and mess around. Also, as you can see down here, it tells you how many people are working on a building when you're doing it and when it's being constructed. So there's 13 on that house at the moment. And the other thing is that now it's not doing it. If you press Alt and double click on a building, it gives you how many of those buildings, including how many are being built or have just got the foundations laid at the moment. And that's really useful if you're trying to count your fields and they're all across the place. And previously you would have double clicked or whatever on the fields and it would have given you, say, 5, but you actually had 2 in construction, and it's and so you may not make as many as you want to. So that's another difference. You can also I can't seem to get it to do it now, but you can snap to resources as well, which is really handy. So let's give an example. Let's take these guys, get them to come back here, and if they're going to build a thing, I can snap that. You can see it's as close to the resource as possible, and that's really, really helpful. So definitely use control when placing storehouses next to your minerals, because that is a massive bonus. And yeah, I think basically they're the main differences. So yeah, hopefully you found that that useful. Just to let you know, if you haven't already, then please vote in my poll, which I've got going on my YouTube channel, which is about how many sorry, not how many, about which factions we're going to focus on the live stream, which is due next Friday. And I'll put a link to it in the description. And other than that, yeah, I look forward to seeing you for the live stream. There'll be lots of interesting stuff, some other YouTubers, a bit of a Q&A, some mirror matches showcasing all the different all the different factions, and we'll have the beginning of the kind of an overview of the faction overview series. There will be a brand new faction overview series because the factions have all changed so much. So I hope you will join me for that. Other than that, I just would like to say muito obrigado and e adeus. Ciao.